what we are in the industry is the leader, I think. I mean, as far as innovation, as far as production, I think that we're the biggest, but I can't tell you that. My name is Don Levin, and I founded and I'm the chairman of the Republic Group. The Republic Group is a group of companies that are located in Western Europe, Canada, and the United States that all are involved with the rolling paper business. The main brand is OCB for branding. Then we have Zigzag, we have Job, we have a Body, we have Easy Wider. We call it plant to puff when we talk about the paper industry. Our hemp paper all comes from Champagne, France. So we go to a cooperative and we actually know the farmers. We can say, this is the farmer that's growing our hemp. And so that hemp, we know where it came from, we know what field it came from, and we know because tracing, we can tell you in which booklet it's in and tell you where it went. So we go from plant to puff. We're the whole supply chain. I was working for Nortel Oldsmobile in Chicago. It was 1969. And for whatever reasons, I didn't like working in the car business. It was pretty staid, it was pretty suit and tie. I had gotten out of the Marines recently. And a friend of mine named Shelley Miller, who just gotten out of the Navy, he and I were talking, and there was a store that he knew of that was owned by a guy like Neil Swybish. And Neil's son was Adam. And he had made this little store. It was like a boutique, I thought. And his store's name was Adam's Apple, son's name. And he had a beautiful psychedelic sign painted on the window. And he was moving to Colorado. So we decided we'd buy that store, and we did buy that store. And because of the beautiful window, we didn't change the name. I remember when I was doing this, my father, who was a used car dealer, thought it was on my mind. What are you doing? You're leaving. You could work for General Motors. It was an opportunity for me to be entrepreneurial, and I was entrepreneurial. And I loved it. I still love it. During the next few years, we had a retail store, and I found that I wasn't much into retail. But more importantly, days after we opened the store, I bought everything in the store, everything else except the cigarette papers. No rolling papers. I said I didn't want any part of that. Other Marines, I didn't even know what they were. So everybody came in the store from everywhere saying, gee, I want rolling papers. And after about 3 days of that, I called Neil and said, Neil, I need the cigarette papers. And we started selling those. There was Bamboo, there was Marfil, there was Blanco y Negro, all came from New York. But we ordered them, you had to send money, and then 2 or 3 months later, you get the papers. And I didn't understand that. So what I came to find out is that they got a bunch of money and then eventually order it. It would come to New York and they'd send it to you and mark it up a lot. And just being entrepreneurial, I said, I can go to Europe and buy it. I don't need to buy it from a guy in New York, and I did. Problem was, when you bought it from Europe, you had to buy so many. Now I had to figure out a way to get rid of them because I didn't have that many retail customers. So Adam's Apple Distributing Company was formed. So we did that, and on the weekends I'd travel to various different places to sell these papers and get them. Time goes on, I keep going back and forth, and I'm in Madrid, Spain, which is the headquarters of Papeleras Reunidas, which is the paper company that made Bamboo. And I'm going to Holland for the weekend. So you stop in a place called Perpignan, France. Every train stopped there, and because they had to change the rails or change trains. In Perpignan, I see that they make cigarette papers there, and they make Job. I'm thinking, well, the French cigarette papers, the big one in the United States is Zigzag. And I'm going now to Paris. So I get to Paris, and I get on, I look in the phone book, and I can read Zigzag in French, because it's Zigzag. And I call up the office and say, I'm interested in importing papers in the United States. Can somebody talk to me? I'm at the train station. I have 4 or 5 hours before I have to be on the train to Holland. So they said, come over, meet a man named Patrick Emery. And I'm talking about bringing cigarette papers in the United States. I'd like an exclusive on cigarette papers. Talking about 5 minutes, and I finally said the name Zigzag. He said, no, Zigzag's on the 4th floor. You're on the 3rd floor, this is Job. I said, oh, I'm in the wrong places, but wait. I said, okay, I'll wait. He said, we made these papers called Roll It Sweet, with 5,000 boxes of each one. And those 5,000 boxes were made for somebody in California that gave us a letter of credit, but it was a phony letter of credit. So we've got them. If you'll take these, we'll give you the exclusive on job in the United States. I said, okay. We write a contract, we sign it, and I'm off. I'm now the exclusive distributor job in the United States. Time goes on, selling job, and it's doing really well. The 80s come around, and a fellow named Vincent Bolloré, he rolls up all the cigarette paper companies. But he closes the Zigzag production facility. He closes all the other production facilities because Job has the best production facility in Perpignan. So he does the roll-up. Everything's fine. I have a good relationship with the factory, and they're making me money, and we're bringing them projects. And the workers get screwed. And the workers are going to strike, and they've never seen this. This is bad. If they strike, it's going to close me down. So I decided to go meet Mr. Bolloré. I don't know who he is, and I got a big mouth. And so I go in, and I actually am very rude in telling him that he's not the smartest guy, and he's screwing this up, and sell me the company, because I care about it, and he doesn't. And he says, okay. He says, nobody's ever spoken to me like this. I said, well, somebody should talk to you like that. I am, till this day, sorry I said those words. Turned out to be the smartest man I've ever met. So he says, what should I do? I tell him what I'll do, and then he explains that OCB, the last letter, is Bolloré, and it's his family business, and they started in 1800 and something. And he'll never sell it because it's his family business, no matter what else he does. I said, okay, that's fine. But he says, what should I do? And I said, well, you should get rid of this guy and bring in somebody else and do, and he does all the things I suggest, and everything works out fine. But before I leave that day, he says, if I ever sell it, I'm going to sell it to you. Okay, you're never going to sell it, I don't think about it. 2000 comes around, I get a phone call. He says, okay, I'm selling you the brand. I'm selling you the company. He says, come to Paris. I've got you a loan from BNP. This is how much it is. This is what we'll do. Don't worry about it. Just come. You just have to have this little money to put down, and you can have it. I said, we negotiating this? No. He said a number. I said, dollars or euros? He said, dollars. I said, euros, because euros were 82 cents. He said, okay, euros. And went to France, and he had met the people from BNP who I'd never met before. And, oh, here, I'll sign this paper for you. I ended up with the brands. I ended up with the company. So we got on his plane. We fly to Perpignan, France. And he explains to them that, okay, I just sold the company to him. I'm leaving, take care. And they're upset. And I said, okay, I've been dealing with you people for 1972, it's 2000, you know me. It's not like it's going to be a new people. But I'm going to stand on the factory floor and I'm going to answer any question you're going to ask me. I'm going to talk to every employee here. I want every employee out there. It took me 2 days standing there to answer everybody's question. And since then, it's been just wonderful. I started in 1969, and NORML started in 1970, National Organization for Marijuana Laws. I'm not a marijuana smoker, and only because if I do, I sit in the corner and drool. I would just never been that guy. It just doesn't react well with my body. It bothered me, I never could, but I don't. But I was always the designated driver, and I was always fun to be around anyway. So after we start getting job papers, we start selling to stores. And stores go on, and the stores are saying, gee, besides papers, I need roach clips. And I said, oh, okay, so we can make roach clips. We smell roach. And then, you ever have a bong? I said, not really, but what is it? I can get it, right? So, and chillums, and then we had pipes, and then we had, so we became the Sears of paraphernalia. We were the big boy in town for that. So we got into that, but then Jimmy Carter did the paraphernalia stuff. It started in the South in Georgia, I want to think. They started enforcing it, and I had one friend get house arrest. One person I knew that wasn't a friend of mine got 104 months in prison. Another one in Pennsylvania had 70-some-year-old parents that worked in his business with him. And the feds said to him, if you don't plead guilty to this, we're going to arrest your parents. But we fought. We formed an association. We hired William Kunstler as an attorney. He did the Chicago 7. He did Bobby Rush. He was, for the time, he was a big-time lawyer. So we fought and we fought and we fought. It didn't work out. We were threatened. We were raided by the DEA, and we had like 40 or 50 people in our warehouse. And I said, okay, I'm out. And we got rid of everything except papers. Because in the law, in the written paraphernalia law, it said if it was papers were okay. And the decision was that white papers were okay. So then it went on and we became Republic Tobacco because we wanted to disengage from this paraphernalia because it was really difficult. I remember coming into the country and coming through customs and being pulled aside and going into rooms, and it was not a fun time to have your name on a list. Things have loosened up. So paraphernalia or vape stores or what are you going to call smoke shops have opened. Hopefully, as this gets more sophisticated and becomes more centralized, it'll be a more normalized business. It should be legal, that's my opinion. It's an underground environment. It makes people disregard the law. They don't like the laws. They don't like police because of it. There's a lot of racial innuendo to this kind of enforcement. Is there a benefit to making it legal? Yeah, you'd probably make the courts a lot freer. You'd probably make the police a lot freer. It's not like when they go legal, all of a sudden, gee, I'm going to sell so many more papers. It doesn't work that way. It's there. Everybody knows it's there. Why are we being difficult? I don't know. A legalization is going to change things dramatically. I don't know who will be good for it, who will be bad for it. But I think it's going to happen, but I think the result is going to be different than people think. The end result will be that distribution will go to a very organized distribution system, be it alcohol or tobacco. I can't imagine that the U.S. government's going to open up and say to somebody, okay, you have to re-establish all these things that already exist. The deciding factor is going to be taxes. Taxes are going to be an important part of legalization. And they're going to want their taxes, and they know that the cigarette companies will do that, and the liquor companies will do it. They'll pay the taxes. They know how to do it. They've already got it set up, and it's going to be a lot of money. A lot of money. The difference between success and failure is taking a risk, right? So why is our company the way our company is? And I think because I was willing to take a risk both ways, be it for something or against something. The people come to me with things and say, well, this is the greatest thing ever. And I said, but does it fit in with me selling job cigarette papers? Does it fit in with that? Do I have the same people? Is it the same customer? Do I have the same phone call? And if it didn't, I wouldn't do it. So I didn't get into manufacturing certain other things. There was Bernie Karp was the first guy they had bongs. Rather than try to compete with them and say I could do everything, I would buy theirs and just add them on to the things I sold. And then to get out was another risk. You say, okay, I'm making this much money, but the risk is I'll go to jail, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to take the risk the other way and get out. So the secret to all of this is just when you see something, most people don't do anything about it. It's like saying, boy, that stock went down, I should have bought it. Well, why didn't you buy it then? Life is just a series of decisions, and if you're willing to take risk, I think you can succeed. If you're not willing to take risk, don't do it. Entrepreneurship is risk-taking. Being where I am now is much more than I ever expected. And it's important to know why. And the why is my ability is to find smart people and leave them alone. I mean, I am good at finding good people and just support them. And they do all the work. There was a story I heard about Walt Disney many, many years ago, and I don't know how true it is, may not be true. So he's talking to a young girl, and it could be all BS. But basically, Mr. Disney, do you still draw Mickey Mouse? He said, no, I don't. She said, well, do you still do this? And he said, no, I don't. Well, do you still do that? And she says, Mr. Disney, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm like a butterfly. I go from plant to plant, and I make things bloom. That's my legacy. And that's where I am today, but it's not where I expected to be. I thought I'd be selling cars on Western Avenue in Chicago.
Alex Risk is the CEO of Pro Hospitality Group, which is a group of 10 hotel properties, and it's valued around $100 million. His newest hotel is called the Lexi Hotel, which is Vegas's newest hotel. It's off the Strip on Sahara Avenue, and it is being billed as the city's first cannabis-friendly hotel. The Lexi's interesting because it's the only hotel right now that is allowing people to smoke marijuana on some of the floors. Adult use cannabis is legal in Nevada, but casinos are federally regulated, and on the federal level, cannabis is still a Schedule I substance. It's still completely banned. So there can be no marijuana use that's condoned by any casino hotel in the city. What's interesting about the Lexi is that it's not a casino hotel. It's just a boutique hotel. It's rather small with 64 rooms. But the Lexi has come out and said, we have a 4th floor, we put air filtration systems there, and that's where guests can smoke or consume cannabis. In a town like Las Vegas, people kind of assume, it's known as Sin City. It assumes there's no rules. It's actually a highly regulated city. There's a lot of rules, and even these casinos, they're very strict. Right now, there are no consumption lounges that are licensed and operating in the city. So as a tourist, you can go to the many dispensaries, but there's no place to consume. So what Risk did is he decided he would open this hotel and kind of put himself out there in a gray area, admittedly, and say, we're gonna allow paying guests to smoke in their hotel rooms. So when you look at it from that angle, it's interesting. He's kind of has a very measured cowboy mentality where his hotel isn't licensed for any cannabis activity at all. And he just owns the property and deciding this is what he wants to do.
What we're trying to be is really cannabis inclusive, which is not cannabis centric. And we are a fun boutique hotel that is focused on well-being, and cannabis is part of it. At the moment, the laws don't allow us to have public consumption, whether it be in the lounge, by the pool, the restaurants, or whatnot. So what we are able to do at the moment is allowing consumption of cannabis in the privacy of your own room.
The soon-to-be very famous 4th floor is where we allow the consumption of cannabis into the privacy of your own rooms. We try to have fun a little bit with it, so all of our 4th floor rooms are 420 and are numbered 420 A, B, C, and so forth.
Risk came on my radar because the Artisan Hotel, which is what the Lexi was before renovations, was kind of this old, kind of funky, eclectic hotel. It was actually known at the last part of its life as a place parties could rent it for $7,300, all 64 rooms. And it became known in the local scene as kind of a hotel that would host sex parties. It sold for $12 million, and the guy who bought it was Alex Risk. I've never heard of him before. He runs an outfit called Pro Hospitality Group. They raise some money, buy these standalone hotels, and then bring them new life. So when someone I didn't know bought a hotel in Vegas, I decided to find out, and Risk has a really fascinating background.
I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. I used to be a military officer up in Canada for 8 years plus, and I moved to Phoenix 17 years ago. And then 2 years ago, after COVID, we were trying to really try to find ways, specifically for one of the hotels we own in downtown Phoenix, the Clarendon Hotel, which is a historical, boutique, really funky hotel in Phoenix. We were trying to spruce up our sales and go back to pre-COVID performances. And in November 2020, recreational cannabis became legal in Arizona. And we were approached by groups that wanted to do cannabis-friendly events. So we hired attorneys, we met with the cities, we tried to making sure that what we could put together was actually legal. We did, we navigated those legal structures, and we found out that it was a niche that was in demand, and it was something that people wanted.
They have a members-only lounge where you could bring your own pot and you can smoke, you can vape, you can imbibe however you want. Then they have these rooftop parties, which are private events. They do THC-infused dinners. it took off and it started doing well, so he decided to do it with a second property. So Risk looked at the map and saw that the Artisan Hotel in Vegas was up for sale, and he bought it for $12 million. They put a couple million in for renovation, so he's like all in for $15 million. And he is kind of the only game in town when it comes to a place being cannabis friendly in Vegas. In Arizona, a property owner can allow or prohibit cannabis consumption. So he's like squarely in the law. The law is very well defined and they navigate that very well. In Las Vegas, they can't do that. They can't allow smoking in a lounge because it's considered public. And the kind of gray area is like what happens in your room. Is that a private residence? The law in Nevada is actually quite gray. It's kind of up for debate. And talking to the cannabis regulators, they say it's out of their jurisdiction because they only deal with licensed cannabis facilities. He's not a licensed cannabis facility. So it's just an interesting story about an entrepreneur kind of going out on a limb. The next thing to look out for at the Lexi and with Risk is how the hotel evolves. You know, he wants it to become more like his Arizona property where there's a members-only smoking lounge. Right now, you can't do that at his property, and the only way he could is if state law is changed. So Risk said that's his next step. You know, he's got the hotel open now. They're going to be about 85% capacity for the foreseeable future, which is great for a new property, especially off the strip. And now he wants to kind of take the concept a little further, and we will see what happens at the state law level.
The laws of recreational cannabis are very, very young. So those laws evolved, or they will evolve. And our goal is to be at the forefront of these laws. We're trying to work with our attorneys and some lobbying firm in order to try to approach the authorities and try to change certain of those definitions, not only for us, but for the whole industry in general, and try to see if we can meet them in the middle and try to make it a win-win for everyone.
I'm Diane Brady. We're here backstage at the Under 30 Summit in Cleveland with Berner. You're about to do I know you're the co-founder, CEO of Cookies, but you're also about to get your 50th album, is that right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The music rises when I say that. So the thing I wanted to ask about is, you went through cancer, and what's interesting to me is, when I think about marijuana and how a lot of people initially come to it, it's having cancer. You kind of had this incredible business, then you got it. How does it change your perspective?
I mean, it totally changes your perspective from everything. Like, you're more grateful for everything you have. You're not really overthinking things like you used to. You kind of just understand that, honestly, the second shot of life is way better than the first shot. I just feel a lot more content with what I've accomplished, what I have, my family, the little things in life, right? So cancer has totally changed my perspective. It's changed. I'm definitely a lot more conscious, even though you just heard me talking about getting a cheeseburger before we leave. I think that was the weed talking, but...
No, wait, we have to talk about the cheeseburger now. It's a unique cheeseburger to Cleveland, I think, or Ohio.
To Ohio or something, but I'm way more conscious about my health and just even my energy and the time I spend with people. It's very, very important that you realize that life can change like that.
Yeah, but you smoke every day?
Oh, yeah.
Eat every day? What's the right way to put it?
I smoke weed every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find, what's the key, if you had to give tips in terms of how to function well as a CEO? Because you just did an amazing conversation, and I saw you smoking beforehand, and you were great.
Yeah.
Most people be staring at your shoe.
Yeah, I still have like the clip of my joint in my pocket and have a really big bag of, and if you like a bud, before we leave.
I'd be staring at your shoes to comment on your shoelaces.
Nah, the key is, I sell weed, so it's just natural, right? But I've been smoking weed every day since I've been 12 or 13 maybe, so it doesn't really affect my thinking. I think if anything, it kind of stops me from overthinking and just kind of keeps me.
How do you build a national brand or international when it's like everything's state by state? Do you ever, because you cross state lines, all this stuff. It's complicated, right? It's not like your average product.
Yeah, you're not growing product in California and sending it all over the world. You have to pick a lot of partners to expand globally. You have to find people to cultivate in each market. You have to have a lot of partners. You have to know how to manage a lot of people. But more importantly, you just have to have that megaphone. I think that's why I have so much music, and that's why I do so many other things in life besides just weed, because that's my actual recipe for marketing. You know, from the music to some of the media, you know, documented stuff that we do, the little short documentaries.
That's right.
And
You're a
you know,
documentarian. I
yeah.
didn't label all the things you've done
Yeah.
because, you know, time's limited, but
Of course,
you're
but
a busy man.
you use that megaphone to kind of build your brand. And if you got the megaphone, you got the knowledge of how to expand without breaking any laws. And, you know,
You say laws.
yeah.
What are
That-
the laws like right now?
I just-
Where
they're-
should they be, the laws?
They should be changed. Someone in the
Like-
White House needs to get me in there. I want to help
it's-
them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no federal mandate for you to do what
There's
you
a
do.
bunch of people that just don't understand what we have in front of us, and there's no way for them to write the laws because they don't understand weed. They don't
Well,
understand.
Okay, here's an opportunity to amplify. What do you want them to understand?
Well, I want them to understand that this is what the people want first thing first. You know, it speaks volumes that marijuana's about to outpace nicotine and alcohol. So this is what people want.
Especially this generation
Yeah.
coming up, right?
This is what people want. I want them to understand that there's a way that they can tax this and make it fair for the operators. That's the most important thing. I want them to understand that it is a living plant and it does have an expiration date on it. And so you want to try to get it to the customers as fresh as possible, as quick as possible,
Yeah.
right? And also just kind of want the regulations to be the same in each state, because it's tough when you could do a really cool branded bag in California, but then in Florida it has to be a white bag with just a simple logo. Fans want the brand that they're seeking after, the ones that they fell in love with, the ones that they've been waiting for as it turns on in other markets. So federal government, let me come through, let me teach you guys a little something about weed. You guys can tax it and make it fair. You guys can make the regulations a lot more friendly to the operator, and you can make the people happy. It's very simple.
You're famous for your Girl Scout cookies. That's what everybody loves. Did the Girl
Yeah.
Scouts ever say anything like, hey, maybe call it something else?
Well, yeah, we always just called it cookies because we knew we'd get sued like
Right.
crazy if we called it Girl Scout cookies. But I think there was one little cease and desist that came for one piece of clothing or something like that, because I do have a clothing company. But we were smarter than that, yeah. Shout out to Girl Scouts.
You know, I want to ask, because a lot of people, they build an incredible rap career and then they become entrepreneurs. You've done it, not in reverse, but you've, talk about that transition. Has it helped being an entrepreneur? Has it helped you in your music?
I think,
prolific.
yeah, I think they both kind of scratch each other's back. Like the music helps you kind of like amplify and speak about what you're dealing with in life and in business, and then the business makes your music a little more powerful. A list came out last year, the richest rappers list, and it was pretty funny that I was on the top 5. You're talking about guys like Jay-Z, Puff Daddy, Kanye West, Dr. Dre, and then me. And you know, it was funny to hear people say, well, he's not even a rapper, he does business. I'm like, well, I'd like to
Right,
argue
sure,
that.
right.
I'd like to argue that. I've been, you know, doing music since 2005. I got 49 albums out. I perform nationwide. I perform out the country. I sell out shows. And every other person on that list has business as well. So, yeah, they help each other. And I
Yeah.
think that's, if you really want to be successful and you're an artist, you got to spread your wings.
Have you had a time when you haven't had an opportunity to smoke or eat, like where you've been stone cold sober? What's that like?
Our flight to Dubai was pretty tough. It was like
Yeah.
38 hours, but as soon as I landed in Thailand, I landed to a plethora of weed and hash, and we turned right up. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not like a dope fiend. I can go without
No,
it.
I know
but
you're not. I don't mean that in a condescending. I'm just saying, like, but it does seem to keep you calm and centered and focused, where for some people it doesn't necessarily. So is it learned behavior,
Nah, it's just part of my
are.
DNA. It's
Yeah.
just part of who I am. The flight to Thailand was great. You know, Emirates. I took a shower over the North Pole. That was cool.
or really?
Yeah,
That's
I found
very cool.
on the plane. I found things to keep myself busy, but that was probably the longest I went without weed. Also, probably my surgery. When I first got surgery with the cancer situation, I was in the hospital for like 4 or 5 days, and I wasn't able to smoke then. But same thing.
What do you enjoy most about your job now, since you have so many different things you do?
I like to create things from the ground up. I like to build things from the bottom up, and I like the design and packaging rollout part of the process. I like the creative process.
And is there anything you're working on next besides your music you want to mention?
Hell yeah.
Heads up.
Yeah, so I just partnered with Bic on my rolling paper company, Vibes. It's tattooed on my other hand. You got cookies, you got Vibes. Those are my 2 babies right
That's
there.
commitment.
Yeah, it's commitment.
It's
That
not
means,
even off the ground. You've already tattooed it on your
Yeah,
hand. That's
yeah.
like, now you got to make it work.
well, I had to make it work. That's why I put it on the hand, right?
Right.
So cookies already kind of got popping, but Vibes just partnered with BIC on a strategic partnership on the rolling papers, as well as maybe helping them in the alternative market with their lighter. And getting in the dry food category, I partnered with Snoop Dogg's food company, and we hope to be launching at Walmart next year, maybe April, May, with like Cookies by Cookies, actually non-medicated dry food, just good snacks. No red dye or none of that weird carcinogenic stuff.
How is his weed compared to yours?
Snoop got good weed. He knows good weed. It's Snoop,
Is it better than yours?
I don't know. I gift Snoop some weed sometimes, but I think we have equal qualities. But
Right.
maybe I have more variety.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah,
The
I
edibles,
might
for
have
sure.
more variety of just different flavors and stuff like that.
Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs? You must have everybody say like, "Hey, I want to be like you." It's like, "Oh, okay. Well, talent. Besides that, what else would you
I
say?"
mean, you just have to be dedicated to what your vision is. You have to put
Uh-huh.
your time, your energy, and your money behind yourself. You can't doubt yourself. And if you just stay focused and you stay dedicated to it, then you can't lose. And that's just like, you have to just want to do it, and you have to do it. And there'll be ups and downs, and maybe things won't go the way you wanted to at the beginning, but if you just stay focused and you just keep building, then eventually, my goal as an entrepreneur is to work with who I want to work with when I want to work with them. And
Is
that's
there someone you haven't worked with yet you want to give a shout out to work?
Martin Scorsese.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be cool. He's getting older,
Right.
he's made some of my favorite movies. Put me in a movie or work with me on a movie. That's it.
As an actor, you want to be an actor in the Scorsese film?
Yeah, I'm actually writing a bunch of films right now, and I have actually I can tell you this. I'm developing a scripted series with FX. I can't talk about what or who's involved, but with that being said, I'm kind
Any
of
hints? You can't
Nah.
talk about what or who's involved. I feel
Nah.
like we should sit here and guess, but I'm not going to do that. That's not fair.
Nah,
It's good
but
to know.
it's a scripted series with FX. It's going to be big, and I'm writing feature films right now. So Scorsese.
Are you starring in that series with FX?
Can't talk about that,
Okay,
but
sorry.
yeah, but I would like to start acting, so that maybe that will give you a hit. So
Okay.
yeah.
And Scorsese, take notice, right?
Yeah, I could be a good mob boss somewhere. I think
you'd
so.
be fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'd be
I
good.
can't think of a better place to stop than there.
Yeah, I want to be in a mob with Lick.
Look forward to it.
Right
Thanks
on.
for joining us.
Thank you.
If you talk to most people in cannabis, particularly those of us who came from other industries, I came from financial services and technology, most people will tell you this is by far the hardest industry that they've ever worked in. It's fascinating and it's fun and it's a constant steep learning curve. So all of those things are great, but it certainly is not a party. It's a very serious industry. I'm Nancy Whiteman and I'm the CEO of Wanna Brands and the founder of the Wanna Brands Foundation. Wanna Brands was actually founded in 2010, right at the beginning of the medical market here in Colorado. So we're one of the OG edible companies. We have 123 employees. We operate in 15 states in the US and Puerto Rico and Canada. And I think that last year we figured out that we made 98 million gummies. I have a sort of a traditional business background, I'd say. I have an MBA. I worked in corporate America for years. I was the VP of marketing for a large financial services company. And then we moved to Colorado when my oldest daughter was about a year old, and I started consulting, doing sales and marketing consulting. One of my daughter's friends was over for a play date, and her dad came to pick her friend up. And I asked him what he was doing. He was a commercial real estate developer. And this was 2010 in Colorado. It was a really tough time for commercial real estate. And he said to me, "Oh, you wouldn't approve." And of course I was completely intrigued. So I said, "Oh, really? What would I not approve of?" And he said that he was making infused soda pop. And that was really interesting to me. I actually was no stranger to cannabis, but didn't actually know the language of medical cannabis. So I said, "What's it infused with?" I really didn't even know what he was talking about. And so we began talking about the fact that it was infused with marijuana. At that point, we were still calling it marijuana. The long story short, we ended up building out a kitchen with him. He had sort of a rudimentary kitchen where he was doing beverages. And we parted ways rather quickly, as many of those early partnerships went. But it sort of got us on this path to making edibles. And so I always joke that I always say I need a better backstory, because so many people got into the industry for really moving reasons. Either they had a loved one who were helped by it, or they're believers in traditional plant medicine, or social justice reasons. But mine was a little bit more, a little more spontaneous and organic than that. When we started in Colorado in 2010, it was all medical, right? And it was very biomass constrained. It was really hard to get enough THC. So we were sort of hand to mouth. We were always trying to do trade deals with people, and to get enough trim, we had to do our own extraction, et cetera. And then we had legalization for adult use. And we were like, this is it, this is the holy grail. But the truth is, it took about a year for the recreational grows to come online. So once that actually happened and we started to see what it meant to do things at scale, we then started to look around for other opportunities outside Colorado. And we started experimenting with a market expansion model. There's some options for how you do that. You can raise a lot of capital, and you can put facilities in every state, or you can do what we ultimately chose to do, which was an asset-light model through licensing agreements. That model did not necessitate us going out and raising a lot of capital. We were able to, first of all, bootstrap the company, so never had any investors or any debt. And then we were able to grow organically just from cash flow and profits. And so that's really what enabled me to hold on to 100% of the equity, is that somebody gave me very good advice along the way, is never take money that you don't need. And I followed that advice.
Watch your step around the corner here. The process flow pretty much starts over here, where we have all these pops prepped with all of our raw materials: sugar, pectin, flavors, the tincture, the medicated tincture that goes in. Back there on the burners, we're cooking up our mixture, getting it up so that we start to get the gelatinization of our gummy mixture. Once it's ready to come off, it goes over to our flavor station, where you see all those cups prepped up. They throw those in, mix it up really quick, and then it goes into these depositors, where we hand deposit all of that liquid gummy mass into these silicone molds. Once it's in the silicone molds, it starts to turn into a gummy. It starts to solidify or gelate. And that process is fairly quick, about 15 to 20 minutes. The great thing about the cannabis industry and how it's been maturing over the last decade or so is we can now buy a lot of the ingredients that we used to have to make internally. So we get high quality distillates from a lot of our business partners. Those distillates come here to make our in-house tinctures and medicated sugars, and that all happens in our lab. The stuff that makes them active, makes them medicated, is all being produced out of this lab. We know the ratios of all of our medicated tinctures. We know the ratios of all of our sugars. It all gets double, triple, quadruple checked a number of different times throughout this process prior to going into the kitchen and handing it off to that team. What you're looking at here, the start of the process is where we take all those finished gummies, we put them onto this blue conveyor where it goes up top to a weighing system that is specifically weighing out 10 or 20 gummies depending on the pack size that we're doing. It'll drop it down into our calyx containers, those white square-shaped vials, and then it'll go down the road, get a cap on it, labels, compliance label, a number of different quality checks. Then it'll go into our cardboard boxes, get sealed up with tamper-evident tape, be ready to go out into the market.
The only way that we really grow the industry is to grow the pie. And what I mean by that is that if all companies do is compete over the high usage, high dosage, want as much THC for the lowest cost as possible consumer, you are constraining yourself, and you're also constraining the power of the plant. What we really need to do is figure out how to make products that bring people into the power of cannabis. And a number of our products actually are low dosage. They're for people who are looking to address specific issues, health and wellness challenges that they're facing, but they don't necessarily want to be intoxicated, right? So that's what I mean when I say that I think we're contributing to really growing the pie and focusing on that through innovation in a way that I don't see a lot of other brands doing. I think a leadership style that seeks to empower innovation has to be one that accepts that you're going to do some stuff that's not always going to be a home run, and that there's learning in that too, and respect for the people who did that as well. You know, the issue of being sort of recognized as a female CEO versus just a CEO is one that's a little bit complicated for me. There have been times that I have been a little frustrated by sort of, if you will, being put in the box of a female CEO, because really by all measures, one is an exceptional company. We've had incredible top line growth, we're incredibly profitable, and those things seem to me that they have their own merit. But when I say that my thinking has changed on this over time, what I have come to realize is that representation matters, to say the obvious, right? But I've had so many conversations with women who have shared with me that it's really meaningful for them to see a woman who has been successful in this industry. Particularly, you know, I'm not 25 years old. You know, I started this, you know, when I was a grown-up that already had a career behind me. I started it, I bootstrapped it with my partner. And it becomes a role model for other women to say, she doesn't seem like she's all that special. If she can do that, I can probably do it too. And I really do see the power of that, and I'm happy to be a contributor to that, for women to know that it's possible to run a company that is values-based, that has a lot of heart, that's very collaborative, that you don't have to compromise on your values to be successful. And I hope I communicate that to people. I think that's meaningful to people, and so I guess I'm moving towards being honored to be recognized for that. You don't have to have everything all figured out from day one. You need to have a direction, and you need to just keep taking the next step, whatever the logical next step is, and trusting that you will figure out how to evolve things over time.
Joining me now is my colleague, Forbes staff writer, Will Yakowitz. Will, thanks for coming on again.
Thanks for having me, Brittany. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And you cover vices for Forbes and compiled a list of some of the movers and shakers in the cannabis industry for 2023. But first, set the scene for us. Walk us over the past 2 years. What has been happening in the cannabis industry? From your reporting, it sounds like, you know, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride.
Yeah, it has been a bumpy ride. So 2 years ago, it really did seem like federal legalization was on the horizon. It really felt any day, you know, maybe in 2020, maybe 2021. And then by the end of 2022, you know, the industry realized that was not going to happen, that it wasn't going to happen as quickly as they had hoped and that they had imagined. But so 2 years ago, a couple of things happened. There were a couple bills filed in, some in the House, some in the Senate. And the most promising one was the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, filed a bill to legalize cannabis. It would end the federal prohibition and take it off Schedule 1, which is the designation it's under now. And they didn't bring it to a vote. And then there was another bill that would have eased some banking concerns called the Safe Banking Act, and that wasn't voted upon. So at the end of this year, what we saw was cannabis stocks, the prices cratered, some as much as 70% or more. And then there were other economic pressures, like being that it's still illegal, taxes are punitive because the federal government taxes the industry as it is designated, which is a federally illegal drug. So they tax them as drug traffickers. And not to get too wonky here, but 280E is the tax code, and it's a killer for the industry. It can really wipe out any profits that a company may have. So where we are this year is like the hype is much more muted. We saw the first drop in the number of jobs in the industry since the legal industry's been recorded. So that was a big deal. And now it's kind of, what we're seeing, the landscape is companies that have had tight balance sheets and that have not been spending too much or taking on too much debt are doing well. The demand is still high, and now we're just dropped down to normal levels. But so any company that's out there that's really focused on their balance sheet is doing well.
Will, I'm really interested to hear how these companies are adapting. From what you're describing, it sounds like they're in a bit of a holding pattern. They've been in a bit of limbo since 2020, and you called what's coming an inevitable green rush. So what are these companies and these leaders that are on your list doing?
So the companies that are strong and are in good shape, it's business as usual, because what you do have to understand is most of the people in the industry aren't, Johnny-come-latelys. They've been in it, what the industry refers to as legacy entrepreneurs. It's people who were working in the illicit market before there were any kind of state licenses, any kind of state level regulation. So the companies are just like, look, we've done this before. We've gone through periods of, like winter, so to speak, where times are lean and things are uncertain. So these companies are just trying to, keep innovating, keep product on the shelves and go forward. And eventually, when federal legalization does come, take advantage of it.
Let's dive a little deeper into those innovations. You compiled a list of the 42 entrepreneurs and leaders in the cannabis industry. Tell us a little bit about the list.
So this year is the second time we've done this list. It's an annual tradition at this point. But yeah, me and Isabel Lord, my colleague, and then my editor, Michael Solomon, for the last few months, we've been getting nominations. We've been doing our own research, collecting names, and then going through, financial documents, interviewing these people and talking to investors, and then going through this big list. We have a huge number of people, like over 100 names, and then we whittle it down to 42, which is obviously hard and heartbreaking. But no, then the end product is a really tight list of people who are doing great things in the industry. So the entrepreneurs highlighted on our list are from all parts of the industry. When concerning flower and farmers, one of the highlights is Ridgeline Farms. It's founded by a man named Jason Gelman. He's a longtime cultivator. He grew up growing cannabis in Humboldt County, California, running from helicopters. Then he got licensed, and now he grows some of the most sought after strains in the industry. And, it's craft, it's sun-grown, it's small batch. And Jason just inked an exciting deal with Cookies, and he'll be selling his proprietary strain through their dispensaries this year. Then on the software side, it runs the gamut. We have a company called FlowHub. They sell software to run a dispensary's POS and compliance systems. We have companies like Jane, which allow customers to order cannabis online for either pickup or delivery. And then we have other companies like Imperial, which is a logistics company. Speaking to the hardships some dispensaries and cannabis companies have, there are about 800 banks across the US that serve cannabis companies. Like pretty much every company in the industry has a bank account. However, there are certain things that are difficult. And, most dispensaries, you have to deal with cash. You have to accept cash because you can't use credit cards. And there are some solutions for debit cards, but the majority of sales are in cash. This means these dispensaries, many of them are mom and pop shops, have huge amounts of cash to deal with. So what Imperial does is they help companies get bank accounts and manage those relationships, but they also transport physical cash from a business to usually the Federal Reserve.
One of the standouts to me on your list was Al Harrington, who was in the NBA for 16 years, and now he's leading the charge in the cannabis industry. So can you talk about that, crossover between athlete to entrepreneur?
Yeah, so Al Harrington is a great example. He started a company called Viola, which he named after his grandmother, who has sadly passed away, but she was the inspiration to start his company. She had a bunch of health issues, and one of them was glaucoma, and one day her eyes were killing her, and he got weed for her. She toked up, she felt better, and as he was going into retirement from the NBA, he was looking for a new business venture, so he started this company. And yeah, they started off like with one grow in Detroit. Now they're almost in 10 states. They also have licensing deals across other states where they don't have a physical presence cultivation wise. So one of Viola's goals, one of Al Harrington's goals, is to help the industry increase the number of Black and brown entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs, people of color in the industry. So cannabis largely is only 2% of business owners in cannabis are Black and brown people. So what Al is doing, he has a couple initiatives, and one of them is to, he has this big audacious goal to make 100 Black millionaires in the industry. So he's created an incubator and is looking for strong entrepreneurs that he will help fund and help mentor. And he has a couple already in the roster that are doing pretty well. And then, other people on the list, Roland Connor, he has one of the, I think there are like 5 or 6 licenses in the New York market. New York just legalized in 2021. And this year they just started rolling out dispensaries. And they really don't have a lot, but Roland Connor he has a fantastic story. He grew up in Queens in the housing projects, got arrested for marijuana many times, and now he opened a dispensary in the Village in Manhattan, and he is probably like the greatest example of what New York is trying to do. New York is dedicating its first licenses to people who are justice involved. That's the phrase New York is using. So anybody who's gotten arrested for marijuana in the past. And so that's Roland's story. And he opened actually the second dispensary, but the first justice involved person to operate a dispensary in the New York market.
Will, that really brings up an interesting point. How many people in the cannabis industry were arrested for marijuana back in the day, and now they kind of flipped that on their head? Is that a big number?
So it's a good question, because certain states, what New York is doing is extremely unique. Most states from the get-go ban anyone who had a felony, even if it was for selling marijuana, from the industry. So when California, Colorado, all these states started licensing businesses, they were saying if you have a criminal record, you're not getting in, which is very similar to other vice industries like gambling. Gambling, you have to, if you want to be a gaming operator, if you want a gaming license, you have to go through background checks, you have to get fingerprinted, and if you have any kind of criminal history, you won't be able to participate. That is how the cannabis industry played out for the first bunch of years in most states. And then New York, they've had a really kind of sleepy and small medical market. It's all controlled by, publicly traded companies. And what New York wanted to do for its adult use market was kind of flip the industry on its head and say, like, this is a problem. If the war on drugs had racist tendencies, Black people are 4% more likely to get arrested for marijuana than white people. And white people and Black and brown people use marijuana at the same rates, essentially. So the laws, the war on pot has had, it's had racist roots from the beginning, but it also played out with these huge racial disparities. So New York decided, California didn't take it, Colorado didn't take it. How can we help New Yorkers who have been tied up in this racist war on drugs to help flip the paradigm? So they decided that they would reserve the first first batch of hundreds of licenses to people who've been quote unquote justice involved. So there's decent representation, but it's not great. And then when you break down ownership racially, it's a largely white industry. So, but you will talk to people like, one person who was on the list last year, who has this great business, Huckleberry Hill Farms. His name is Johnny. He was arrested, served 8 years. Like there are tons of stories, especially on the cultivation side. You don't just wake up one day and decide you want to grow pot and you're going to do it legally. Like most of, this plant's been illegal for decades, right? So most of the people who are really good at cultivation, like anything, it takes time, to master a craft. A lot of people on the cultivation side had run-ins with the law. But yeah, New York is doing something very unique. And it's hard too, because kind of meshing these two goals with like filling a market's needs. Right now, New York has a humongous issue with unlicensed businesses. So if you didn't know anything about the industry or about the legal status and went to New York, there's weed shops everywhere. But the problem is they're unlicensed. And what the state is trying to do is open the legal industry to kind of shut down this unlicensed industry, but it's been difficult. So kind of threading the needle with these two goals, like legalizing marijuana and having enough access to meet the demand. New York is going to be the second largest market. If there's enough stores open, legal sales could hit like 4 to 5 billion in a couple of years. So yeah, they're trying to thread this needle. It's like this, fill demand in this capitalist framework, which obviously is our economy, and then kind of achieve these social justice and social equity goals.
I do want to talk about someone on the list who, as of right now, might be arguably the biggest name internationally, and that's WNBA superstar Brittany Griner, who was detained in Russia last year over a cannabis charge there. So can you tell us why she made the list this year?
So for people who don't know, Brittany is a basketball star. She's really accomplished center in the WNBA. And she got arrested in Moscow. She was playing off season, which she's done for years in Russia. And when she got off the plane, she got stopped and they found cannabis vaporizers in her bag. And she, long said that it was a mistake. She didn't, she has a medical card. She uses it medically, but she didn't mean to bring it to Russia. So they arrested her and she, pled guilty. She went to a penal colony and she was there for 10 months. It was a really harrowing experience. But what it did was put, kind of the hypocrisy of the United States drug laws and what we're putting people in jail still to this day. It's illegal federally. People are still getting caught up because of these laws. So really why Brittany's on the list is because of her influence and kind of how she put a mirror to the United States and how we deal with marijuana to this day at a federal level, So the Biden administration referred to her arrest and detention in Russia as wrongful. So really what Brittany did was she put a mirror up, like just her situation, put a mirror up for the US to reflect on how we still treat marijuana and people who use the drug or are in the industry to this day.
Do you see her situation changing any laws in the United States or changing anything in the next year in the cannabis industry?
So that's the $26 billion question, which happens to be how much cannabis was sold last year. But right now, the Biden administration has asked the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services to review marijuana's scheduling. So right now it's in the same schedule as LSD and drugs like heroin, which like on the face, I think it's pretty safe to say, any educated person who knows the differences between these drugs can say that's ridiculous, right? Marijuana, especially compared to other legal substances like alcohol and tobacco. So anyway, the point is that Biden has asked HHS to review the scheduling and they will have a decision out. They said they wanted a decision out based on science and facts and all that, but they wanted to do it very quickly. So the secretary has said multiple times that, like, we're going to look at the science, but it also is like, has the country's views and relationships with marijuana changed since the 1990s? And any observer can say, yes, it very much has. Right now, we're almost at 40 states that have some type of legalization. More than half Americans live in a state that regulate marijuana in some way for legal sales. So, there is hope on the horizon, but with the federal government, it moves slow, and industry, as always, and entrepreneurs move much faster.
Will, I'm really interested to know, what do you think the future is here? You covered this list in 2022 and 2023. First, I want you to say the biggest differences you saw, and where do you think we're going? What do you think we should keep our eyes out for heading from 2023 to 2024?
That's a good question. So, the evolution, like, these companies are getting stronger. Another standout on the list is Nancy Whiteman. She started one of the first edibles brands in America, like, that was licensed. She started it in 2014 in Denver. And a lot of those companies that started 2014, the first year adult use sales launched in Colorado, are just not around. So what she built is one of the country's largest edibles companies. And she sold the right for this Canadian company to acquire, when it's federally legal, her company. And she sold it for like $350 million. She is right now, like, let me just do that one part. So she sold the right for a Canadian company to acquire her company. Once it's federally legal, she sold it for $350 million. She sold this option to buy. So right now, she is one of the most successful people in the industry, like, period. Like, that she's created humongous value. So what we are seeing is these companies, we're kind of seeing a bloodbath on anybody who isn't have a tight balance sheet. But then we're also seeing success. Like, we're seeing the cream rising to the top. And years down the line, who knows? It's a crystal ball situation. But I do think we are going to see, like, waves of consolidation. We've already been seeing that, really every year. Companies start merging, or bigger companies acquire smaller companies that have really been successful. So I think we're going to continue to see that. And then we're going to see bigger players get in. Alcohol and tobacco companies have already made billions of dollars in investment, and they're going to continue to do that. And then this is really just like, no one knows how the federal government will regulate it if they decide to do so. But, alcohol has a two-tiered system, meaning, like, you can make it, but you can't sell it directly to customers. And there's a distribution line right there between. So people do assume that legalization and regulation of marijuana at the federal level might look a lot like alcohol or tobacco. So we will see. But, like everything, it really comes down to money and how much tax revenue the federal government can squeeze out of the industry.
And if you can boil down 2023's cannabis list to one common theme, what would that be?
That's a tough one, but I think, I think innovation is really kind of the common theme. There are companies live and die off innovation, right? Like, you can't sit on your hands. You have to constantly be following consumer trends and pivoting, or dealing with new regulations. Like, especially when a state first starts, they just don't know how to regulate. This has forever been, not forever, but, for the past 80 years, cannabis has largely been illegal across the US. So down to packaging, down to, driving, DUIs, and, like, how do you tell if someone is high? It's a difficult thing. It's not like alcohol, where they can take a breathalyzer and it's like, well, you're over the limit, so you're now under arrest. So there's just so many different ways that legalization affects society, right? So how do you make sure these products don't get in the hands of children, right? Like, the common thinking is, when you regulate and legalize something, bring it out into the sunlight, you can prevent sales. Like, you have to show your ID when you buy alcohol or cigarettes or weed at a retail shop, right? But in the illicit market, that structure doesn't exist. But then there are new different problems that arise. Banking obviously is an issue, even though it's always been an issue for the industry. But like, once states are taking tax revenue from marijuana companies, and obviously the federal government does that too, like, how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with these businesses that are getting taxed as a legal entity at the state level and then an illegal entity at the federal level? So it really comes down to innovation, and companies have to adapt to changing customer demands, changing economic climate. I mean, just over the 2 years, we saw a bust and a boom and a bust and a boom, you know, so, and then changing regulations, or like the status quo on the federal level, marijuana is still illegal, and it's very difficult for companies to deal with.
Obviously, it's a fast-changing industry. I'm excited to keep our eye on it throughout the next year. Will Yakowitz, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate it.
Since I started getting into the cannabis business, it did occur to me that it would have made more sense to do cannabis first and stimulate the demand, but there was the problem of legalities. But it would be interesting to know whether legal weed increases ice cream sales. I'm Ben, the Ben & Jerry's guy, and we're introducing B3, which is Ben's Best Blends. It's a new cannabis brand. Jerry and I, we started Ben & Jerry's in 1978 as a homemade ice cream shop in an old gas station in Burlington, Vermont. He does some things on his own, I do some things on my own. I guess I'm more into cannabis than he is. The usual and more common belief at the time was that business could not use its resources to deal with social issues. It wasn't possible for business to do that if business did that, it would go out of business. What we found at Ben & Jerry's was that there's a way to integrate your social values into your day-to-day business activities, and that's what we're doing. The idea for B3 came about when a friend of mine and I were sitting around a campfire smoking a J, and we were saying, you know, the problem with today's pot is it's just too strong. When we were in our college years, you know, that you would be able to spend a bunch of time smoking a J, that you could do it casually, you could pass it around amongst friends, and we wanted that experience. The idea just kind of stuck with me, and I just felt like I had to do it. It's an interesting structure. So B3, the parent organization, is registered with the state of Vermont as a nonprofit organization. And it's a licensor, so we license our formulas and our brand and our trademarks and our packaging to a licensee who then has the exclusive rights to it. B3, the parent company, gets a royalty. And we use those royalties to provide loans and grants to Black cannabis entrepreneurs, and also to support the Vermont Racial Justice Center and the Last Prisoner Project. Here in Vermont, Chris and Craig, CNC Higher Love, they're responsible for getting the product made and selling it and distributing it.
My name is Christopher Walsh. I've been doing operations for Ben for the last 2 years, and I also did all the formulas for all the products.
And my name is Craig Mitchell, and I am in charge of sales. Being a licensee in the state of Vermont, which we're the first state to license Ben's Best, means that we are the exclusive distributor and promoter of the brand in the state.
I signed up because of the mission more than anything else. Secondly, I had just come off a year in Jamaica studying terpenes, So Ben said, hey, I want to make effects-based formulas. How do I do this consistently and repeatably in every state? So I came up with these terpene formulas. And as we're putting the ideology of our products out there, people are coming out of the woodwork saying, like, finally, I don't want 30% THC. You know, I want to treat this like my glass of wine.
Chris and I, we met in Jamaica. I used to DJ Spring Break. He ran a Spring Break company. And me DJing down there is really the only times I would be able to enjoy a joint. Because you can smoke a whole joint and not be out of your mind.
Ben was a disruptor in ice cream before that term was even used. And he's definitely being a disruptor in cannabis because this whole terpene forward, low THC idea that he had is actually really accurate, and it's the way the plant's meant to be used. Part of what we were doing is inspiration, part of it was science, and a lot of it was just throwing stuff at the wall. And I think we're gonna get past that and really become a data-driven company that makes really precise products. We are in Brandon, Vermont, and this is Grassroots. Grassroots started about 10 years ago. It's a great space. It's got radiant floors. It's got plenty of space for us to expand into. It used to be a furniture manufacturer, and it's primarily a cultivation facility, but we also do all of our processing, manufacturing, and up front is a very small medical dispensary that by next week will also be an adult use dispensary. It'll be mixed use. We'll have medical patients and we'll have adult use patients. This is the kitchen. This is where we make our edibles. It's totally climate controlled. This is a challenging room because we have to adhere to all the regulations of cannabis, but we also have to adhere to all the regulations of the health department. So the one aspect of cannabis that's most challenging are edibles because flower, the other derivatives, you don't literally put in your body. So you only have to adhere to the regulations of the Cannabis Board. This we're answering to the health department too, so it's an ongoing challenge. This is a technology, it's a little pharmaceutical for most cannabis companies, but we use a torquer to put the perfect tension on a cap. Each cap has a foil built into it that the torquer puts just enough pressure seal so that when you run a cap under this induction sealer, it's hermetically sealed. There's no degradation and no oxidation whatsoever with the flower from not only terpenes, but you don't lose any of the cannabinoid potency as well. The definition of Schedule I is no medicinal value. So our philosophy is if beer doesn't have medicinal value, why isn't that Schedule I? That's the message on the jars. And then the box that the jars go in talks about Harry Ainslinger, who was the first head of the Federal Narcotics Bureau, which is a precursor to the DEA, who made pot illegal and pushed mandatory minimum sentencing. And so basically today his legacy persists and cannabis is still a Schedule I drug that is in the category of things that have no medicinal value. And I think all it takes is somebody to try cannabis once to immediately feel that there's something medicinal going on.
The problem in the industry is that it's mostly black people who ended up in jail for this product that's now legal, and yet it's mostly white people that are making the money off the legalized industry. A lot of states, as they're legalizing, are now setting up these social equity programs so that they give priority for licenses to people who are negatively impacted. But the problem is that because of all the discrimination against black people that's gone on in the banking industry, the real estate industry, education, housing, getting financing or jobs, many black people don't have the capital to actually start a business and use that license. And So we're trying to use our profits to provide capital for Black cannabis entrepreneurs. I'm not going to make any money off B3. At the end of our first 12 months in business, we've made a guarantee to do what we can to help right the wrongs of the war on drugs. At a minimum, we're going to provide at least $100,000 to new project to fund these Black cannabis entrepreneurs. It goes to the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, which is a Vermont organization that works on the issues of racial justice. And it goes to the Last Prisoner Project, which is kind of the preeminent national organization in the country working to get people that are in jail for pot out of jail and to help expunge records and to help people re-enter the society. If we were wildly successful, the product would sell really well, and there'd be Black cannabis entrepreneurs in most legal states that wanted to license this brand, and we would license it to them. We want to expand through Black cannabis entrepreneurs that are owners. The way to do that is to license the brand. The idea is to provide the opportunity for Black cannabis entrepreneurs to have equity.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Forbes staff writer, Will Yakowitz. Will, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
You cover vices for Forbes, which I can imagine is probably the most fun beat here.
It is fun.
And I'm excited to talk to you about the first ever topless dispensary in the country. It's in Massachusetts. Give us the backstory here. How was this idea born?
Yeah, so it's still an idea right now. It's not open yet, but basically there is a shuttered old strip club on Route 10 in Western Massachusetts. It's been closed since COVID. And the two owners have pitched this new idea. They're in the process of buying a cannabis license. So what they want to do is take the stage out and get rid of the liquor license and convert it into a dispensary. And since they have a nude license, which you need a license to run a strip club that's specific to that type of business, they want to keep that and just create a topless dispensary, which is admittedly very lowbrow, but it's just a funny thing in the industry.
I'm excited to talk about this idea, but let's first back up and talk about the strip club that was originally the building. Was that well perceived in the community, or was it more of a black eye?
So, the answer is a little more nuanced than that. Locals would refer to it as the Whately Ballet. It's in Whately, Massachusetts, and it has been closed since due to COVID. So the club and the owners have kind of struggled to find their footing, but it is a long-standing establishment. Before it was closed in 2020, it was founded by a husband and wife duo in 1974. So it's been there for 50 years at this point.
And now it has the potential to be a topless dispensary, which on its face sounds pretty scandalous. What has the response been? Has there been any backlash?
Locally, there hasn't been a backlash yet. As they get closer and, further through the process, there might be, during the first board meeting of the town, it was mostly like weed jokes and stuff. And, we'll have to come up with another name other than the Whately Ballet. So that remains to be seen. A former Massachusetts regulator told me they feel like it is a step in the wrong direction for the industry, being a topless dispensary. However, this person didn't see that it would be, this type of business wouldn't be allowed. So it's interesting. Massachusetts has a $4 billion, since legalizing marijuana in 2018 for adult use, they've tracked $4 billion in legal sales. So just last year alone, it was like 1.4 billion, and they have like around 250 dispensaries. So there's still room in the state. You know, the industry is very young, and this area in particular, you know, Western Massachusetts, but it's 30 minutes away from the MGM casino. It's 15 minutes away from UMass Amherst. So while the actual town is small and it's not in a bustling area, it's not in Boston, there is potential for a lot of visitors.
Why is the weed business in Massachusetts booming? Is this the most lucrative state to have a dispensary business in?
No, it's not. Massachusetts does have a sizable, you know, almost 1.5 billion a year. California is the largest state, over 4 billion a year. New York is slated to become like the second biggest state, but you know, that state, New York is currently kind of struggling with its gray market and struggling with the legal rollout of its adult use. But California is king when it comes to weed.
And this would be the first topless dispensary if everything goes through. But aside from strip clubs, are there any other businesses that have this nude component to them?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the industry, you know, in Florida and New York City, there's a strip club steakhouse. In Washington State, there's a chain of coffee shops. For whatever reason, the baristas wear bikinis. So, you know, there has been, you know, throughout history, there's this, you know, that people have these ideas, like how do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? And, you know, sex sells, and some people go that route. You know, a lot of these businesses don't stay in business. I think there was like a topless barber in Australia for a year or two, which
that could get messy.
Yeah, and yeah, right. But you know, the point is, what I find interesting is while the idea could be perceived as immature and lowbrow, it is a sign that the industry itself is maturing. That it's not enough just to open a dispensary. You need some kind of gimmick, you need some kind of shtick, or you need a really strong brand. So that, to me, that's how I interpret this. You know, it's a funny thing that's happening, but it is a sign that the industry is growing and you need something more to succeed.
And can you give us a sense of the two entrepreneurs behind the gimmick? Mm-hmm. There are two Boston entrepreneurs, I think, in the real estate industry. Right. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so one is Julius Sokol. He's, you know, has opened a couple of dive bars and sold a couple of dive bars in Boston. Now he's kind of in restaurants. And the other partner is Nicholas Spagnola. He's also in real estate, and they've come together on one dispensary that they're trying to open in East Boston. They have the license and they're currently building it out now. And then Julius owns, with a couple other people, another dispensary in the Boston area.
And neither of those dispensaries are topless? This would be the only one?
Fully clothed. Yeah, this would be the other one. And, you know, I'd be remiss not to mention probably the closest example in the industry to this concept is there's a dispensary in Lodi, New Jersey. And so anybody who has watched The Sopranos and knows of Bada Bing, the location of Bada Bing is actually the strip club called Satin Dolls. There's a dispensary that opened right next to it. So that's like literally as close as you can get at this point.
Okay, so now these guys are just marrying the two together.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is next for this topless dispensary?
So now, you know, they have a signed agreement with somebody who got a cannabis license in that town but never opened their business. So they now have to go through like the bureaucracy and the red tape. They basically need to see if the state will allow them to take that license and put it at the address of the strip club. And if that's okay, then they have to go through the siting and zoning to see if everything is okay, and then slowly build out from there. So they told me if all goes well, they see like before the end of this year, the top of 2024, they'll hopefully be open.
That's quick. And are they confident that everything is legal and they will get through?
Yeah, I mean, the Julius told me, you know, running, you know, multiple nightlife businesses, you know, permitting and all this stuff is never, you know, a straight line. And he'd never say it's easy. And he said adding the nudity component makes it slightly more complicated. But again, the venue has a license for all this stuff. They also have a liquor license. So they're kind of pitching it to the town as like, this is better than a strip club with alcohol. This is a dispensary with no alcohol. People aren't staying. It's, a shop. You go in and you come out. So they're pitching it as like, this is an improvement of the current use case of this particular business. So we'll see if the community buys into that narrative, and we'll also see if the state cannabis regulators go ahead with it.
And what about other businesses in the community? What's their reaction to a dispensary opening up?
Yeah, so I called a diner, which is like 2 minutes up the street, a 24-hour diner. And, as soon as I asked the question, they started hysterically laughing and like, yes, we know of the Waitley Ballet's idea to turn into a Topless dispensary. And they said, look, that place has been closed for years at this point. So any kind of life there would be good. And, kind of half joking, but not really. They said that we would assume a weed dispensary would give us more business, more hungry customers.
That sounds like a 24/7 diner's dream,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Will Yakowitz, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany.